Well, we know that a good diet and exercise routine are keys to a healthy life, but as we age, our bodies change, and what we need changes too. Here to tell us about healthy aging and what to keep in mind is Dr. Ronna New with HMG Geriatric Medicine. And great to have you, Dr. New.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we were talking September, an important month. It's Healthy Aging Month.
Absolutely. It's Healthy Aging Month. And at Holston Medical Group Geriatric Medicine, we're very focused on helping our patients to age as healthfully as possible. So I appreciate you having me here today to talk about how we can age in the healthiest way possible.
And this is really important because our bodies change as we age, and what we need, especially when it comes to nutrition, I understand really changes too.
It does change, and there are a lot of challenges that can come as we age, and I see many of those challenges in my practice. And of course, the biggest challenge that many of us think about is malnutrition that can come with age. And malnutrition can be defined in a lot of different ways. It can be overnutrition as well as undernutrition. And undernutrition is what most of us think about, which is not getting enough calories. But there's also overnutrition, which is getting a lot of excess calories that are not the best calories. They're not the calories that are with good nutrients and good vitamins. And so it's important as we age to have a healthy balance of that nutrition to prevent medical problems as we get older.
And I understand there are a lot of factors that sort of come into play. Our taste buds can even change as we age. The things that we enjoy may change.
Yes, unfortunately that is a part of normal aging, is that our sensation of taste changes as we get older. And so for many of us that means that we tend to choose more of the sweet types of foods because we lose a lot of the sensation of salty and savory, and we tend to like more of the sweet foods, which is not very good, unfortunately, because then we have excess calories, and that can lead to obesity and a lot of medical problems as well. So that changes as we age, the sensation of taste as well as our sensation of thirst. And that can be a big risk because it can present the risk of dehydration. Sure. So if we're not thirsty, we're not drinking enough water, and that can cause us to get dehydrated as we get older.
And of course, knowledge is power, so knowing these things and making those changes. And you said too, exercise and exercise habits can really change too.
They can, and exercise is very important. Having a healthy balance of nutrition and exercise as we age is incredibly important. There is a term called sarcopenia, which basically means loss of muscle mass as we get older. If we do not do activity to counteract that as we get older, we tend to hold on to a lot of the fatty tissue and lose a lot of the dense good tissue, the muscle tissue. And the risk of that is if we develop sarcopenia as we age, we lose our agility and we lose our balance. And if we don't have good strength, that can put us at risk of having falls. And that's one of the biggest risks that I see to my patients in my practice, is the risk of falls. And so everything that we can do to maintain good physical activity as we age is really important to prevent falls, infection, and other risks as we age. It's recommended that older adults get 2.5 hours of healthy, moderate level physical activity per week, and that can include everything from walking to other light exercise, but it's incredibly important that anyone talk to their physician first before they begin any physical activity regimen.
So it's important to really open those lines of communication as we age, like you were saying, because there's so many different resources that are available to kind of help us navigate. A lot to be considering as we age.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider, and unfortunately a lot of risks, but there's a lot of ways to counteract that and to stay very healthy as we age. I have a wide variety in my practice. Just to give you an example, my youngest patient, I take care of patients 65 and older, and my youngest patient came on her 65th birthday. The oldest patient I've ever cared for was 109.
Oh, wow.
And even my 109-year-old patient was as physical active as she could be, was only in a wheelchair in really the last couple years of her life.
Wow.
And I asked her one day what her secret was, if she could share with younger patients and some of my other patients what she did as she got older. She said, my advice would be to just keep moving. And so that's important, is no matter what our age, staying as physically active as possible, but also feeding our body with good nutrients is really important to help us just to be as healthy as we can as we get older.
So we may have to modify, but
right.
The key is to keep moving and talk to your doctor.
That's right. That's important. I think it's important to have preventative care as you get older and to really come up with a healthy aging plan with your physician. As a geriatrician, I help my patients to do exactly that, to stay healthy, and that includes being balanced with healthy activity, healthy nutrition, and also I encourage my patients to stay social, because when you think about healthy nutrition, a lot of what we do with eating involves being social and being around other people. And so I encourage my patients to not allow themselves to become isolated as they get older, but to be very socially active as well.
All right, well, certainly some great information. Dr. New, we want to give everybody the phone number. If you would like to start that conversation, Dr. New would be happy to meet with you. You can call that number right there on your screen. It's HMG Geriatric Medicine, and you can always check out their website as well for more information.
The preceding portion of Daytime Tri-Cities was sponsored by